Human blood sprayed across the alien bridge as Major Rickard executed the Draken commander with ruthless efficiency. Nothing could have prepared the galaxy for humanity's next move. Outgunned and outmatched, Rickard rallied his elite squadron to defend Thera's vital resources from the next wave of Drekon forces. If the humans failed, the planet would fall. But defeat was not an option. With the fate of Thera resting on their shoulders, the humans vowed to tap into their deepest resolve and demonstrate why underestimating humanity leads to brutal consequences. This was their moment to make the universe tremble. The console went dark. Major Rickard slammed his fist on it. Nothing. The line to command was dead. He eyed his squad's faces, exhausted, determined, ready to make a last stand. Backup wasn't coming. The Terran forces were galaxies away. Explosions rocked the Thera skyline. Swarms of Draken carriers descended, shadows stretching across the streets. "We make our stand here," Rickard said, voice raw. His squad fanned out, turning buildings into stockpiles, halls into kill zones. They rigged explosives, set traps, and their city became a fortress of destruction. Sasha steadied her rifle on the rooftop. She moved her scope from one alien commander to the next, each shot a promise fulfilled. They fell, staining the streets below. Rickard saw their opening. The Drakens charged blindly, predictable as always. A plan ignited. He called for a technician. "Cut the power grid," he ordered, pointing at the city map. "It'll black out the whole city. Our defenses—" "Do it, it's our only shot." Minutes crawled. The city's hum peaked, then went silent. Darkness swallowed Thera as the lights died. The Draken's mechs ground to a halt. Human shouts rose in the void. Soldiers moved through blacked streets, senses sharp. Blind, the aliens were easy kills. Rickard led the charge, his team with him. Each intersection a battle, each building a fortress. The smells of fire and blood filled the air. They pushed forward, block by block, retaking their city. Thera burned, but now with human tenacity, a city defying the night. At the fire's heart stood Rickard, his people beside him, showing the galaxy the strength of human resolve. The capital burned. Men dragged comrades from the rubble as medics rushed between the wounded. The city stank of smoke and burnt flesh. Major Rickard yanked a twisted piece of alien metal from the debris. "Search them. Find anything we can use," he said, wiping soot off his face. His team ripped open panels, sifting through wreckage. Private Jenkins held up a device, wires dangling. "Major, I found something." Rickard took it, examining the cracked comms unit closely. A chance. He met Jenkins' eyes. "Get Sasha. Let's move." Under moonlight, Sasha climbed Mount Atheon with her team. Boots slipped on loose stone as they grabbed for holds. Each step grew heavier as the ground trembled from the battle's aftermath. They climbed on, muscles burning, breathing hard. Sasha kept her eyes ahead. The team wore matching looks of determination, no words needed. Failure was unthinkable. At the top, steady hands rerouted the device's damaged circuits. It sputtered, then lit up. She aimed the antenna at the night sky. Static crackled, then a clear tone. She pressed transmit. The signal shot into the void. Before relief came, a shot cracked. Sasha's head jerked toward the distant Draken sniper. The device exploded in sparks. They dove for cover as a second shot missed by inches. Below, Rickard watched the sky, hope fading. A lone Terran ship blinked into view, answering the call. Cheers erupted. "Mount Atheon is ours," Rickard yelled. "Fortify this position." They moved as one, fierce spirit undimmed by the relentless foe. They stacked stone, dug trenches, turning the peak into a fortress. Sasha joined them, heaving sandbags despite exhaustion. This mound of stone and dirt would be their stronghold, their message to the galaxy. Humans endure no matter what. The Draken flagship hovered in orbit. Inside, the metal halls were cold and dim. Commander Krail stood in the war room staring at the hologram map. Reports came in non-stop. The map showed his soldiers losing ground, bleeding red across Thera's surface. This wasn't right. Humans shouldn't be holding this well. Krail slammed his fist on the console. The screen flickered. He growled. "Ready full bombardment. All ships, Krail ordered. The officers exchanged quick looks, but got to work. They locked coordinates and charged weapons. The humans would die from above, cleansed for Drican rule. Major Rickard hid in the shadows on Mount Athion. In his hands, the alien device. He flicked through the symbols, dancing under his touch. He needed something, anything, to turn this around. Sweat dripped down his temple, mixing with the dirt on his face. The hours flew by. The device beeped. A glimmer of hope. He put his ear to the crackling speaker. Alien voices filled the static. Bombardment coming in less than a day. His heart sank, then surged. Time for the final play. He called Jenkins and Sasha over. Their faces reflected the pale moonlight. "We use this on them," Rickard whispered. His fingers worked the device, rerouting, adjusting. "Jam their signals. Make them fire blind." Dawn crept over the sky as the fleet unleashed its power. Rickard watched the horizon, device humming in his hand. An invisible signal, potent all the same. Orbital cannons fired, streaking lights towards Thera. But the calculations were bad. Beams missed their marks, slamming into a Drican cruiser instead, tearing open its hull. Explosions rippled through the fleet. On the flagship, Krail's voice broke into snarls as his own ships exploded. On the ground, Rickard and his team tightened their grips. They watched the fireworks, hearts racing. The bombardment stopped, but the ground war wasn't over. Dropships touched down, less but still fierce. Human boots dug into the dirt. Rifles snapped up. The coming wave would crash against their unbreakable will. The battle would continue, but they'd shown the truth. Never underestimate humans. Captain Vaughn bent over the comms console on the Terran ship. He worked the controls to clear up Sasha's distressed call for help through the static. "Thera to any Terran ship, we need support now." Her voice rang out urgent and desperate under the clamor of battle. Vaughn acted fast. "Full speed to Thera," he ordered the pilot, who punched the thrusters hard. The stealth ship, built for speed, not fighting, shuddered as it raced to help. Odds didn't matter. They had a rescue to do. The ship shook, hitting Thera's atmosphere. Outside, deadly laser fire lit up the war-torn planet. The pilot dodged flak while Vaughn reached Rickard on the surface. "Rickard? Vaughn here. We're in the atmosphere, coming to evac civilians and provide air support," Vaughn said, steady but tense. Rickard's weary voice crackled back between sounds of endless combat. "Copy, Vaughn. We're prepping civilians, but the Drican blockade is tight. We'll hold the line best we can." Vaughn gritted his teeth. "We're punching through, be ready." On Thera's battered streets, Rickard updated his troops. Rifles in hand, eyes hard with purpose, they fortified positions and readied for the coming onslaught. High in a broken tower, Sasha peered through her scope. Her breathing stayed even as her precise shots dropped Drican soldiers one by one. Her face was set. She had a job to do. The Terran ship swooped low, engines roaring. It fired every weapon it had, targeting Draken anti-air with surgical strikes. Rickard's forces cheered as the tide turned. Civilians poured from shelters, clutching their few belongings. Soldiers covered them, moving with the ship's strafing runs. Defiance and war played out in concert. For every advancing Drican, a Terran stood ready. The Terran ship pressed its relentless assault, weaving through the blockade. It deployed drones to flank the Drican forces and add to the chaos. Vaughn's crew worked swift and focused, executing each order with precision born of desperation. Rickard watched the Draken air support dwindle under the onslaught. He barked orders to start the evacuation, guiding civilians toward the landing zones. "Move it! Move it!" he shouted, voice ragged but firm. Rifles cracked, covering fire as the refugees stumbled forward, propelled by hope of survival. Thrown into disarray without air support, the Drican pressed on with less zeal. Even they sensed the shifting tides. As the last civilians boarded the shuttles, Rickard paused to watch the humble Terran ship ravage the Drakan, with a ferocity belying its size. Its crew embodied Terran courage and grit. The battle was far from over, but for now Rickard and his forces had carved an impossible respite. And as Vaughn's ship climbed to safety, a moment of peace punctuated the distant rumbles of an endless war. The workshop buzzed with metal clanging and soldering hums. Rickard watched his grease-smeared engineers pick apart alien tech, reconfiguring it with focused hands. They were ragtag but determined, forging crisis into advantage with scavenged scraps. "See this, sir." Reeves held up a sphere, cracked open to reveal its glowing insides. "Their shield generator. We figured the mechanics can replicate it. Smaller, portable." His voice carried exhaustion and breakthrough thrill. "Good. The mines." Another engineer's steady hands kept working wire cutters. "EMP mines, Major. Perimeter traps. Fries anything alien that steps close." Rickard nodded, satisfied despite the curtness. "Do it. Prep defenses." The sun sank as alien forces massed on the horizon. Rickard's squad moved out in twilight, precise and quiet. Each soldier carefully placed the mines, locations marked only in their minds. The alien horde surged, electronic footsteps drumming impending doom. But Rickard's troops stood firm behind jury-rigged barricades, shields raised in defiant wall. First came crackling explosions, as tech short-circuited in the EMP fields. Alien cries and dying machines melded into battle din. The portable shields flickered, shimmering barrier against alien weapons. Blue bolts splashed off the energy fields, harmless. Rickard's troops returned disciplined fire, picking off disoriented foes. The melee was brutal, the ground a tableau of combat. Humans and aliens grappled in dirt, claw against tooth and nail. Blood, both red and green, painted the broken streets. But a shift was palpable through the struggle. The once outclassed humans now clashed as equals, ingenuity leveling the field. They moved with confidence, strengthened by unbreakable shared spirit. Rickard surveyed the fray, weapon ready, resolve like iron. He shouted orders over the noise, beacon in the chaos. "Hold the line! Stand strong!" And they did. Each human, each act of bravery, a testament to their will, the will to survive, protect their world, not just endure, but overcome. As the dust settled and the last alien retreated, the ground showed evidence of the fierce struggle. Yet the fighters remained, unbowed amidst the ruin, a beacon of hope on the war-torn planet. This was what happened when you underestimated humans. The stench of war filled the air. As the Drekan soldier walked up to Rickard, hands raised and weaponless. Rickard watched him carefully, gun ready. His team had seen tricks like this before, but a lone Drekan approaching was new. "I'm Lerzod," the alien's voice droned through the translator. "I no longer serve the blindly ambitious." He stood straight, desperate conviction in his eyes. "I have information. There's a hidden fuel depot in the Argonius Peaks. Find it, hit it, you cut the fleet down." Rickard listened closely for lies, but Lerzod's voice was steady and earnest. Rickard turned away, glancing at the dark horizon, and muttered to his partner, "Watch him. Stay alert." Rickard went to Sasha, pulling her from her sniper spot. "This could be big. If true, it's our best shot to end this." He summarized Lerzod's news. Sasha responded quickly, "Let's see if this traitor has anything useful." Within the hour, Sasha led her squad through Thera's scarred landscape, moving silently like the distant hum of war. They climbed the Argonius Peak slopes. The thin mountain air chilled their breath to mist, but they continued upwards. The depot appeared, carved into the mountainside. Guards paced the perimeter, silhouetted against glowing energy barriers. Sasha's team watched from the shadows, counting patrols, marking turrets. Each new detail gave them hope for Thera's future. At the command post, Rickard addressed his remaining fighters. "It's time! We hit them hard! Draw them to the city! Sasha's team does the rest." Faces grim, they nodded, knowing their sacrifice's importance. Sasha's engineers prepared explosives from both alien and human tech, rigging maximum destruction. They precisely set charges on fuel lines and power conduits, planning to ignite the enemy's heart. In the city center, Rickard launched the attack. They charged with full fury, gunfire and grenades shattering the night's stillness. Drawn to combat, the Drekans redirected forces to crush the unexpected assault. Under the noise as cover, Sasha detonated the charges. Fire burst from the mountainside, a sudden dawn. The ground shook, the sky lit with the burning depot's rage. Echoes of the massive blast rolled down to the city. Amidst the chaotic sounds of battle, Rickard's soldiers felt the trembling and saw the light. Their hearts lifted, knowing what it meant. Renewed, they continued fighting, as the depot's destruction signaled the siege's brutal end. The ground rumbled as Sasha stuck the last charge to the depot's metal frame. The timer blinked red, counting the minutes down. The detonator was a solid weight in her hand. She wiped sweat from her forehead and eyed her work, the explosives ready to blow the alien stockpile apart. "Move out," she said, her voice rough from dust and need. The squad vanished into the mountain shadows like ghosts. Drums of war pounded the city's heart as gunshots snapped out a rhythm. Rickard and his soldiers stood firm in the battered street. Each blast marked another enemy volley, another moment holding their ground. His eyes locked on the foe, counting each step in his mind, a countdown to the coming clash. He signaled the team, hands sharp with command. They nodded, ready for the dance with death. The Dreekans came like an icy wave, cold armor and colder purpose, blind to the faint, dulled by arrogance. Rickard saw it in their movements, too direct, too sure. His fist tightened on his rifle, his body coiled tight to strike. His team mirrored the tension, muscles wired tight. Then the moment shattered. The earth roared as fire clawed the sky. Shockwaves hammered the city. The depot was an inferno, Sasha's work done. The Dreekan heart lay blasted apart. Above, their ships flickered and died, energy gone. Some became one with the atmosphere, trailing smoke as they fell. Others drifted, silent tombs in orbit. The humans watched, breath held tight, then loosed in cheers. They stood amid rubble, faces lit by the flames above. The once mighty enemy now rained down in pieces, a silent testament to human grit and cunning. Rickard didn't smile, but triumph showed in his nod. "Stand down," he said, his shout-roughened voice carrying command and relief. Eyes once tight now softened, reflecting the fire's glow. They had done it, snatched victory against the odds. Humanity had prevailed. Krail clenched his fists. He stared at the hologram of Thera, the planet he'd failed to conquer. The fuel depot strike had crippled his fleet. Ships lost power and fell from orbit, wreckage in Thera's sky. His second approached, wary. "The humans—" "I see what they've done," Krail's voice boomed, silencing the bridge. He lowered to a seethe. "I'll burn them all, ship by ship if I must." The second nodded and returned to his post. Krail watched the holo display, plotting revenge. His eyes grew tired, but his rage kept him awake. On Thera's surface, Major Rickard and his men moved through ruined buildings. They picked up abandoned Dreekan rifles, feeling the strange curves and buttons. Rickard handed one to Lee, a wide-eyed recruit. "Learn this, teach it," he said. They began dismantling the alien weapons, integrating them into defenses. The work was urgent. The war wasn't over. The soldiers dragged in a dented piece of Dreekan armor, scored by human bullets. Engineers surrounded it, prying open panels, claiming power cells. "We can use this," one said, holding up the compact power source. Rickard watched his people work, determined and resourceful. They'd survived by bravery and cunning. Now they armed themselves with the enemy's weapons and technology. Their reputation grew with their determination. A private approached, holding a cracked Dreekan helmet with intact comms. "Major, can we reach the others with this?" Rickard turned it in his hands. "Get this to communications. See if it works." The private saluted and hurried off. Around a fire fueled by scavenged Dreekan energy cells, soldiers spoke of the day's events. In a nearby cage, a captured Dreekan watched the flames. Rickard noticed but said nothing. He knew the power of stories, how they spread like fire. The words of Thera's defenders reached far, transmitted by jury-rigged tech, fueled by fierce determination. In Dreekan-controlled space, enslaved miners and farmers heard whispers of human defiance. On a mining colony, workers listened to a static-filled broadcast in the dark. Thera stands. They fight, and they win. Miners shared glances, emboldened. Rebellion caught flame, fueled by tales of the planet that showed the Dreekan could bleed. The biting mountain wind nipped at Sasha as she led the line of prisoners down the rocky slopes. The captive Draken engineers shuffled along, hands bound but feet free, eyes cast down to avoid their captors' glares. "Keep moving," Sasha said sharply. One engineer caught her attention, Tarvox, his silver scales marking his high rank. He knew things, secrets to give humanity the advantage. Promises of freedom loosened his tongue, revealing schematics and codes Rickard could use. "Can we fly these?" a grease-smeared mechanic asked Vaughn. "We'll make them fly," he replied, determination etched on his face. New energy pulsed through Thera's streets. Soldiers drilled combat patterns, alien in design, yet human in execution. Rickard watched, clapping his hands. Faster. Surprise and speed will break them. Under guard, the Draken engineers reinforced the city defenses with hybrid technology, following Tarvox's lead. The once crumbling walls now bristled with portable shields and cannons running on Terran codes. "You do good work, Tarvox," Rickard stated. "Freedom is powerful motivation," the engineer replied through gritted teeth. The debris-strewn streets were now clear. In the open skies where enemy ships once droned, Terran pilots guided Draken fighters into formation, engines humming with defiance. Around night fires, soldiers spoke in hushed tones, grimacing at the taste of scavenged Draken rations, but eating to fuel themselves. Rickard walked among them, a silent reassurance. They were no longer desperate defenders, but agents of the Draken downfall. The siege dragged on, but now the Drakens hesitated, supply lines cut, forces encircling Thera uncertainly. "Ready cannons!" a steady-handed lieutenant shouted. The battered streets now pulsed with human tenacity and cunning. Rickard's dust-smeared troops manned their posts. "We hold until we can't," a soldier said, rechecking his weapon. But it wasn't desperation in their voices now. It was confidence, the kind that comes from staring into the abyss and stepping back with a plan. Rickard nodded to his men. "Next time we fight, they won't know what hit them." It was clear Thera was no longer just a battleground. It was a fortress, a beacon to the stars. Underestimate humans at your own peril. Liazod's words rang out in the command room. The alien defector repeated, "Krail's flagship. There's a weak spot. A fault in the shield controls." Rickard studied the simple lines Liazod had drawn. If true, they could turn the tide of battle. He met eyes with Sasha, his second in command. No words needed. Rickard whispered, sharp as a knife, "Get the team ready." Rickard laid out the plan in a cramped briefing room. The hand-picked team focused intently. Sasha burned the hologram's details into memory. "We go in looking like them, their ships, their codes," Rickard said. He pointed to the route. "Quiet and fast. We board, plant bombs and take out core systems. Precision hit, surgical strike." Sasha added, "Ghosts. They see us, we're dead." She picked out the weapons she needed from the table. Hours later, Terran pilots flew captured Draken ships through darkness to the massive flagship. Each held their breath as the comms demanded codes. They sent the stolen ID. Seconds passed like hours until the response came. "Clear to dock!" Inside, the flagship's halls stretched like ribs. Sasha led with swift, silent steps. They moved unseen, shadows within the ship. They reached the core, hum of power below. "Here," Sasha pointed to an ordinary panel. She steadily wired the bombs. The others watched for enemies. Phantoms. No alarms or soldiers came. Bombs set, they pulled back unseen. Sasha signaled Rickard. They moved to escape pods as the timer ticked down. The bombs exploded, consuming the core in fire. The flagship shuddered, lights flickered, screams filled Draken channels. Krail's ship was wounded, shields dying out. Rickard's team launched in escape pods into space as chaos took the crippled flagship. They'd done the impossible, struck the heart of Draken power. As pods drifted to Thera, the blockade faltered above. Leaderless Draken ships scrambled. On the surface, soldiers watched the signs of victory light the sky. In the human camps, cheers erupted. Rickard saw his fighters embrace, relief and joy in every shout. They had beaten impossible odds. And far above, Commander Krail felt the sting of defeat. The fortress of Thera and its defenders had dealt him an unthinkable blow. The humans had prevailed again. Darkness surrounded Thera as Rickard's team flew through space in stolen Draken fighters. The ships glided silently past orbiting pickets. Sasha watched the enemy flagship grow closer. It loomed like a fortress in the blackness. She checked her gear. Steady hands, steady mind. No doubts now. Eagle 1 to flagship, damaged, request docking, a man said into the comms. His voice stayed calm despite his pounding heart. A pause. Granted, docking bay 6 open. The ships landed and locked down in the hangar. Sasha signaled her soldiers. 6 deadly warriors nodded back. They split into 2 teams and moved deeper into the ship. No words needed. Each step brought them closer to the heart of the beast. They were a silent plague infecting the enemy's war machine. Sasha's team found the access panel. A quick hack and the door slid open. The dim throb of the power core reached them, one chance to change the course of the siege. Elsewhere, gunfire erupted. Plasma bolts sizzled the air. Rickard's team had engaged the enemy. Shouts rang out as Dreekan soldiers rushed to fight. The battle was on. Sasha placed the bombs with care, each charge a promise of payback, a hope for the future. She started the timers, red numbers counting down. Time to go. In the corridors, her friends held the line. The cornered humans fought fiercely, aim true. More enemies came, armor clanking. But the soldiers stood strong against the alien tide. Bodies fell, some human, some Dreekan. But the mission stayed fixed. The future of Thera, of humankind, rode on this. The bombs exploded with deafening force. The ship shuddered as fire and metal screamed. Lights flickered, alarms wailed. Krail's once mighty flagship, now a wounded giant. Fall back, Rickard yelled over the chaos. Move. Sasha led her team to the escape pods. They fired away as the flagship came apart, debris scattering into the void. They had succeeded. The blockade over Thera was broken. Humanity's will burned bright and unbroken as the enemy fleet fled. Sasha carefully placed the last charge on the dull grey core of the Dreekan flagship. The web of wires and metal kept the massive ship alive. Each explosive stuck fast to the core, timers ticking down in silence. Red numbers counting to 0. Sweat stuck to Sasha's skin in the hot, stale air. She scanned her work. No mistakes. She clicked her radio. Bombs are set. Let's go. Her team nodded. They wore enemy uniforms, but stood with her against their former masters. They knew each second mattered. The betrayal came quick. Tarvox, the silver Dreekan who'd led them through the ship, attacked. He slapped a bomb, hissed alien words. The timer blinked erratically. Quiet exploded into violence. Humans and Drekans clashed in desperate battle. Metal slammed metal, fists battered scales. A Drekan swung and a human fell, dazed. A roundhouse cracked scales off a defector's head. Sasha's knife flashed as she dove into the brawl. She found an arm, twisted, slammed the body against cold metal. Chaos in close quarters, each move critical, each block life-saving. The defectors fought hard, but the humans had hardened resolve. Years battling on Thera had forged them. The timers beeped madly as the scuffle raged. Sasha grappled with Tarvox. His grip was crushing, strength surprising, but her determination was a weapon he couldn't match. She kneed his gut once, twice. He gasped, and she threw him down. The brawl ended as quick as it started. The traitors pinned or beaten. Her team nursed new injuries, but they shared a look. Too close. Sasha crawled to the skipping random timer, 5729. No pattern she could fix. Deep breath. She had to do this. Her knife pried the charge open, exposing the wires and guts. Evacuate now, she said. Her team moved fast and low to the escape pods. They left Sasha focused on the timer. Sweat and seconds slipped as she cut and rerouted wires. The timer ticked down steady again. 3, 2:59, 2:58. Sasha sprinted through the ship past fallen Drekans and burnt metal stench. She dove into the pod and smashed the launch button just in time. The pod shot into space. The flagship's lights failed as it died. Her team watched the final countdown unleash the core's fury. The heart of the enemy erupted in flame. The flagship listed as shields flickered and died. Pods speckled space like seeds from rotted fruit. Humanity's iron resolve had struck true. They stared out the foggy window in awe. They'd done it. They'd survived and triumphed. Above Thera, the shattered Dreekan fleet lost nerve. Below, humans would see their first clear sky in ages. This victory was a statement. Underestimate humanity at your end. Alarms blared through the flagship's halls as red lights flashed. Reinforcements charged towards the core, weapons ready. Rickard's team held off the attack at the entrance. They fought hard with their training. "Stand firm!" Rickard yelled over the alarms. His team fired back precisely, dropping enemy soldiers in the tight corridor. They worked together smoothly, covering each other's backs. Sasha's strained voice came through Rickard's earpiece. "We're pinned down. We need a way out." Gunfire echoed behind her words. Rickard broke away into a shuttle bay. An undamaged Drekan shuttle waited inside. He fired it up and flew through ruined ships and debris. Sasha's diversion team shrank as their ammo ran low. The Drekan soldiers closed in without stopping. Sasha's team fought fiercely, knowing these could be their last moments. The corridor filled with the sounds and feelings of their stand. Rickard flew the stolen shuttle precisely through the flagship. "I'm almost there, hold on," he told Sasha. The core charges hit zero. An explosion rocked the flagship as fire burst from the core. The ship bucked and shields flickered out as systems failed. Sasha and the others fought to the nearest port. They quickly shot the last pursuers and got away. They saw Rickard's shuttle dodging towards them through the destruction. The shuttle's bay opened up, a lifeline in the chaos. Sasha's team jumped in and the door closed behind them. "Go now!" Sasha yelled, and Rickard hit the thrusters. They escaped the burning flagship, its damaged shape standing out in space. On Thera, clear skies let people look up with hope for the first time in months. They cheered their oppressor's blow. Aboard the shuttle, Rickard and his team shared relief, but Rickard's eyes stayed fixed on the stars, focused on the next fight. Their mission was only partly done. They had proven the human spirit's power when ignited for freedom. On his damaged flagship, Krail felt new uncertainty creep in. The console confirmed the wounds. Humans had damaged his ship and pride. He realized, underestimate humans and pay for it. Their resilience surprised him. Hands clenched, he knew the fight was not over, but doubts entered his thoughts for the first time. Smoke hung over where Krail's ship had been. The flagship limped away, damaged and broken. The Drekans argued and shouted. Without Krail, they fractured. Rickard watched, eyes narrowed. His fingers tightened on his gun. This was the moment. He turned to his troops, faces dirty but eyes fierce. They knew it too. "Now," he said, "we take back our home." The humans moved from the rubble, steps quiet. They knew Thera's scars. Each alley meant survival. In a bombed cafe, a young soldier waited, helmet dented. Two Drekans stumbled in, arguing. She fired quick bursts. They slumped down, argument done. Above, pilots took patched ships into the sky. Rickard's voice crackled over comms. "Stay sharp! Clear our sky!" Engines roared. A pilot locked on a lazy Drekan. Fingers danced over triggers. Lasers hit. The Drekan exploded. Fragments fell. 3 sleek Drekan ships noticed. They flew together to intimidate. The lead pilot smirked. He dove right at them. Wingmates followed, knifing the sky. The Drekans didn't expect this. Clumsy, they relied on power, not cunning. Explosions came as Terran ships ripped into them from all sides. For every Terran lost, 5 Drekans fell burning. The sky cleared with each second. Rickard moved through the streets, grim smile in place. He checked corners, gave hand signals. His team moved together, clearing, gathering, prisoners taken. "This is our planet," he muttered. They were a tide, pushing the Drekans back inch by inch. A Drekan soldier burst out firing. Sasha was there. She dodged, punched his throat, grabbed his gun, knocked him out. "We fight for Thera," she said. The others echoed, rallying the cry. The last ship crashed into mountains. People climbed from shelters, eyes skyward. Tears, cheers, laughter. Most of all, fierce pride. Thera was theirs. The sky was clear. The invaders broken. "Skies are clear," the comms buzzed. "Good," Rickard replied. "Keep patrols going, no surprises." He walked through the city of soldiers and let himself smile. Thera stood free, a beacon to all. Underestimate humans? Not anymore. Comms filled the command center. Officers stared at screens as reports came in. The room was tense. "Commander, look at this," Captain Marastone said, eyes on the latest feed. Commander Harlan Miles walked over, face tired from the battles. He watched the video from Thera. Wrecked alien warships, human cheers, reports of smart fighting by the rebels. Mara pointed at a glowing map. They turned the siege around, sir. Used the enemy's own tech against them. More than a win. A game changer. Harlan thought about what it meant. Get me enemy fleet movements. Any changes since this happened? Yes, Commander. Mara typed fast. They're less aggressive, chaotic command. No backup to Thera. They're pulling back. Murmurs filled the room. The impossible happened. Thera stood strong and sent ripples of rebellion out. Harlan picked up the secure comm. This is Miles. Connect me to the Council. He spoke loud in the silent room. Council, Rickard's gamble gave us a chance. The enemy is exposed. We've got momentum. The Council looked shocked, hope growing. Are you saying what I think, Commander? One asked. Harlan nodded. Yes, this is our turning point. We support Thera, make their victory our spearhead. The enemy is weak and we've got proof. Excitement grew. A council advisor cleared his throat. Commander, Thera didn't just resist, they inspired. Systems are talking. Rickard sparked something big. Councilwoman Ayers leaned in. We agree, Miles. Rickard's tactics are solid. He's promoted, effective now. And the backup? Harlan asked. 5th and 7th fleets rerouted, en route full support. Thera will stand and we will push on. Harlan cut the call and turned to the room. You heard them. Rally the fleets. It's not just Thera now. It's for all of us. Mara assigned squadrons and battalions to the incoming fleets. Harlan watched, smiling slightly. Message to Rickard. Fleet's coming. Tell him humanity is coming. Comms buzzed with energy. Yes, sir, they said. The mood changed. They had a strategy now, led by Thera's unrelenting will. And far away on battered Thera, Rickard stood with his weary but firm men. They beat the odds. And now the galaxy responded. Rickard stared at the charred ground of Thera as the Terran ships pierced the sky. The sleek metal hulls descended fast, like birds of prey. Pride swelled in his chest for their victories, but grief twisted his gut at the thought of soldiers who wouldn't feel Thera's soil again. He clenched his hands behind his back. Anxiety tore at him. This was a break, not the end. One huge ship, the command ship, thudded down. The doors hissed open. New troops spilled out carrying weapons that shone in the sun. They moved with purpose. A young lieutenant approached Rickard, eyes wide. Sir, Lieutenant Morris here. We've brought more ammo and troops ready to follow you. Rickard nodded. The hint of a smile touched his lips. Get your men settled, Lieutenant. We've got planning to do. His voice stayed steady, hiding the storm inside. He walked over to Sasha, who watched the new troops with quiet focus. Her face was smudged, her eyes steady. She'd been with him from the start, her sniper rifle killing from the peaks. Sasha, they sent what we need, he said low. We'll coordinate the attack. He saw her scanning the horizon. You're with me now, as second in command. Your skill kept us alive. It's time you help lead. Sasha met his eyes and nodded, gravel in her voice. We'll give them hell, Rickard. They walked to the command center, boots in rhythm. Inside, holograms cast pale light on the planning tables. The new troops clustered around, eager for orders. Rickard surveyed them with fresh determination. He rapid-fired orders like bullets, each finding its mark. He leaned over the map, fingers tracing routes. He caught Sasha's eye. We strike at dawn. Brief your pilots. No mercy. She saluted crisply and headed out. The troops tensed like coils under Rickard's commands. Fear and excitement buzzed in the room, the breath before the plunge. Thera was ready to bite back. Rickard stood at the head of the war room table. The room's dim blue light cast shadows on his weathered face. Soldiers and officers surrounded the table, staring at the glowing map. Red and blue dots marked enemy bases. Here, Rickard pointed at a blinking red dot. That's their main supply hub. He turned to the defector. The Dreekan's eyes no longer showed arrogance, just careful focus. How often are there reinforcements? Rickard asked. Every rotation, Commander. Their comms can call for help any time. Sasha leaned in, finger brushing the map near a relay station. That the communications relay? She asked an engineer. The Drekan engineer nodded. "Hit that, half the sector goes dark," he said. Respect now, not fear, in his voice. Murmurs filled the room. Sasha and Rickard exchanged looks. They both saw the potential. Rickard traced a path from Thera to the bases. We hit both. Keep them confused and uncoordinated. Red teams on supplies, blue on comms, fast and hard. Voices responded with determination. They knew the stakes, the chance they had. Sasha turned to a young lieutenant. "Get your pilots ready. Full assault, you take blue team to the relay." "Yes, ma'am," he replied, already calling orders on his communicator. Rickard's hand rested on his gun. Eyes scanned the room, nerves and adrenaline on every face, but also the iron will of humanity, ready to push back. The room buzzed with activity. Soldiers and techs worked in pairs, human and Draken united now. It was an odd but welcome sight. In the corner, a tech team worked on a device, screens flickering with codes, the fruits of Draken and human minds combined. Rickard watched, satisfied. They were ready to fight. The session went on. Officers debated and refined the plan. Rickard and Sasha exchanged knowing looks. Their moment to change the war was here. As mission details filled the screen, a new energy charged the room, hope and determination, knowing the task ahead. The ragged fleet was now a spear, aimed at Drekan space. Silence filled the command center. The sensor operator, face pale, turned to Commander Rickard. "Something big heads our way," he whispered. His fingers tapped the console fast, bringing up pictures of the incoming mass. Cold, indifferent Drekan metal, the rumored planet killer, now confirmed by its steady approach. Rickard's jaw tightened. He looked around the room. "Alert the fleet. Prepare to meet it," he barked. His voice carried command's weight. His orders cut through the fog of shock. His officers jumped into action. In the hangar, pilots got into suits fast and smooth. Mechanics fueled the ships. Each hose and cable gave life for the coming fight. The command ship buzzed with the sounds of metal, flesh, and purpose. Sasha stepped to the hollow table. She caught Rickard's eye and nodded, a silent promise of readiness. In orbit, Draken elites swarmed the planet killer like hornets guarding a nest. Their sleek ships barricaded the approach. "Evasive maneuvers," Sasha told the pilots, calm but urgent. On screen, the ships darted in, weaving through enemy fire. Rickard watched the deadly dance between hunters and prey. Lasers sliced the black, ships swirling in close combat. Fighters exploded into flame, their wreckage scattering. Inside, tension squeezed the air from the room. Orders flew fast. As the fleet closed in, the planet killer's shadow stretched across the stars. "This is it," Rickard said. Thera's fate hung on his word. "Hit them with all we've got." The fleet rallied with new speed. Limping ships surged, guns blazing. The barrage surprised the Drekans. Their lines crumbled. Explosions lit the blackness. The planet killer's shields flickered. Cheers filled the room at the cracks in its defense. "Keep pressing," Rickard shouted. His ship shuddered, firing with the smaller ones. The battle stretched time to breaking. But Rickard's forces held strong against the storm. Their plan was simple and bold. Survive, protect Thera, deliver a crushing blow. This battle tested humanity's will against Draken might. But amidst the chaos, one thing was clear. Never again would the Drakens dare underestimate human resilience. Rickard buckled into his fighter cockpit. Lights blinked on the console. The engines thrummed to life. His squadron's voices filled his headset, steady and ready. "Blue 2 here, ready to fight." "Copy that," Rickard said. "All wings, sound off." One by one, they confirmed readiness. Rickard scanned the void. The planet killer loomed against the stars, guarded by elite Drekan ships. He took a breath. "Stick to plan, protect Thera, engage!" The fighters blasted forward, thrusters blaring. In the upper atmosphere, the deadly dance began. Lasers flashed as Terran pilots slipped through the Draken front. The Drakens were good pilots but predictable. The Terrans used that, hitting hard. Each Drekan ship destroyed was a small win. Each Terran lost, a painful blow. Still, they fought on. On the ground, Sasha watched the chaos through binoculars. She stood on a tower shouting orders into her radio. "Battery 3, target the squadron. Fire on my mark." She dropped her hand. Anti-air guns thundered, rounds screaming at the Drekan ships. They broke formation, thrown off. Below, soldiers rushed to their posts. The people of Thera, faces grim, awaited the enemy ground assault. Sasha left the tower, moving amongst the ranks. She clasped a young soldier's shoulder. "Stay sharp. Watch your sectors." He nodded, gripping his rifle tighter. Sasha checked her weapon and ammo. She scanned the horizon where ships descended. Thera's defenders braced themselves. "Hold the line," Sasha yelled over the cacophony. "For Thera!" The soldiers echoed her, resolve hardening. They took aim, the air electric. Sasha steadied her rifle on her shoulder, breath even, focus narrow. She fired, every shot clean, every bullet mattered. Above, the planet killer crept closer, its shadow spreading. It loomed over the battlefield, a silent, judging titan. Below it, humanity stood small but defiant. They would not break. They would stand and fight, determined to make their mark. "All fighters, concentrate fire on their leader." Rickard's voice cut through the noise. The Terrans focused their attack. The Drekan leader's shields failed under the barrage. It broke away, trying to flee. The Terran ship stayed on it, hammering relentlessly until it exploded in flames. Rickard pulled up, the planet killer now fully in view. Its threat loomed, but fear had no place here, not today. He set his sights on the superweapon. The final confrontation loomed. Thera's fate hung in the balance. Humanity rose to the test as they always did. With courage and belief, they would triumph. They would make the Drekans remember this day, the day humans proved their grit once again. Rickard's fingers tightened around the controls. The stolen Drekan fighter shook beneath him, remade into something new by human hands. His gaze narrowed, hunting through the chaos of clashing ships. Energy bursts lit up space. Terran ships battled the Drekan, beams crossed in a dance. His ship juked and dove, engines rumbling. Sweat rolled down his face, but he ignored it. There was only the mission. He wove through the mess, guns sending Drekan escorts spiraling into fire. They couldn't match his skill. Below on Thera, Sasha's voice broke across the radio, precise and urgent. "Opening on your 12, Rickard. Take it." He banked the fighter hard left, pushing its limits. The G-forces strained against him. But there it was, the gap she called. He punched through the scattered vanguard, adrenaline fueling him. Terran ships followed, swarming the breach. On Thera's surface, soldiers manned the defenses. Cannon and missile tracks aimed skyward. Heavy blasts echoed, shaking the ground. Civilians hurried to shelters, guided by volunteers. Stern faces masked fear. In a makeshift command center, engineers worked the missile console, fingers flying. A grease-smeared man shouted to boost power. "Full power? Break that shield!" Above, Terran ships danced around the planet killer, brushing annihilation. Rickard locked his eyes on the target, heart hammering with the ship's engines. Warnings lit his console, but he didn't waver. "Make these shots count," he whispered, adjusting the crosshairs. His finger hovered over the trigger, waiting for the instant. Below, the missile roared skyward, charged beyond safety. "Missile away!" Hope filled the voice over the radio. Rickard took a breath and fired, his hybrid weapons bombarding the shield. The missile struck, a bright flare in the void. His guns hammered the weakened shield. A cheer erupted on Thera. The shield flickered but held. Rickard cursed, pulling back for another run. "Not done yet," he said fiercely. On Thera, the soldiers reloaded and waited, faces illuminated by console lights, resilience embodied. In orbit, Rickard's battered squadron circled for the kill, ships scarred but unbroken. The planet killer's defenses were faltering. Humanity's determination swelled, the planet killer loomed, but Thera's people glared back, ready to sacrifice all for their home. Raw defiance stared into the abyss, steeled for the fight to come. Lasers streaked the sky over Thera. Ships twisted to avoid them. Each pilot fought alone in the bigger fight. The Terrans matched the Drekans' every move. A stealth shuttle slipped by unseen. Inside, Sergeant Hawkins checked his gear. His hands were steady. He looked at his team in black armor, faces hidden. The mood was tense. Their job: get inside the planet killer weapon. The shuttle slid into the weapon's shadow. Hawkins watched the door. He cut power and drifted. 5 seconds, he said calmly. The bay doors opened. Hawkins guided them in with bursts from the thrusters. The shuttle docked silently. On Thera, Sasha launched missiles. Their engines lit up. They rose to find Drekan targets. The defenses broke apart. The hangar was quiet. No alarms. Hawkins signaled to move out. They left the shuttle with weapons ready. The hangar hummed with power. Corridors branched out. Hawkins led the way. He matched each turn to the blueprint. At the checkpoint, 2 guards stood watch. The team moved along the walls. They took down the guards before alarms sounded. Hawkins gestured to advance. They left the dead guards. Deeper inside, more soldiers came. Their shouts echoed. The Terrans fired back. They cleared each section. The path to the core was dangerous, but Hawkins' team was brave and skilled. They broke through doors and controls. They kept moving forward. They were humanity's spear point. The core chamber pulsed with alien tech. They set explosives with steady hands. Hawkins checked each timer. Charges set, he said. They retraced their steps quickly. The mission depended on escape, back through familiar corridors to the hangar. The shuttle waited in silence. They boarded and pulled away unseen. On Thera, the weapon defenses flared. Too late. The charges blew up the core. A blossom of fire in space. On Thera, hope kindled. In his fighter, Rickard smiled. Humans had struck back hard. The Drakens would remember this day, when humans taught them fear. Hawkins signaled halt. Shadows stretched across the harsh interior of the planet killer as they moved silently forward. They expected guards around each corner. Instead, gaunt faces emerged from the dark. Civilians enslaved by the Drakans. One stumbled into view, clutching ragged clothes. A restraint collar dug into his neck, the kind Drakans used to control slaves. "Please," he whispered, "are you here to free us?" Word spread. More civilians emerged, shock shifting to defiance in their eyes. "We're here to end this," said Hawkins, motioning to the explosives. Revolt sparked in the civilians. They surged past the soldiers, using their knowledge of the weapon against sparse, distracted guards. Swarming control panels, striking weak points, the slaves gave their all. "Left passage," one said. "Less guards leads to the core." Hawkins nodded thanks. As his team moved on, the sound of the uprising rose behind them, chaos masking their advance. His team exchanged glances, recognizing the significance. This was more than just their fight. They streamed each moment back to Thera, faces of the uprising. Drakan panic and cruelty, the relentless Terran push forward, a signal stronger than tech, a call for unity. On Thera, the troops watched rapt. The slaves' fury resonated in their chests, steadying grips on their weapons. "They're fighting with us," Sasha said. The possibilities dawned. Hope amid destruction, allies among the oppressed, a scene oft repeated now playing across the stars. Purpose bound the Terrans tighter. With guidance from the slaves, Hawkins' team set charges swiftly and precisely, weakening vital systems. Patrols were diverted by the chaos, ensuring a clear path. Each explosive charge was a solemn promise. The uprising gave strength, made the impossible seem simple. Hawkins met the eyes of a young civilian holding a piece of guard armor, once confined to fear and service, now free. "We will remember this," the civilian said. "We all will," replied Hawkins, weapon tight as his team pulled back. The charges set, the mission complete, a momentous shift, more than just hope for Thera, but for the galaxy. In orbit, the Terrans watched the shuttle emerge from the planet killer, swift and ghostly amid the chaos. On Thera, the people waited, ready to cheer or weep. But resolve burned in their hearts. The day the slaves and soldiers stood together, the day the Drakans began to fall. Hawkins' voice crackled through the comm. "Charges set. Move out now." The commandos dashed through the dim corridors. Wires and panels hung down where they had planted the bombs. The explosives ticked, ready to destroy this place. The Drekans reacted slow to the attack. Their commanders barked orders over the comms, first to stop the rebels, then get in formation against the Terrans. It was chaos. The disciplined troops now scrambled in a panic. Rickard's voice cut through the mess. "Eagle Squad, fire on their side. Falcon Wing, cover us." The Terran ships darted through space firing. Each pilot danced with the Drekans, protecting the shuttle's escape. One Drekan's ship flew too close, exposing its belly. A Terran ship struck it with lasers. The Drekans blew apart into the void. "Night!" Hawkins and his team reached the shuttle bay, their sleek shuttle waiting inside. They moved as one, watching each other's backs, their weapons ready in their hands. The Drekans tried to defend, but the rebel attacks inside the ship disrupted them. Here some rebels took out weapons. There they overwhelmed checkpoints, former slaves now fighting back. Hawkins glanced back at the chaos as they boarded. "We did more than plant bombs today," he said. The shuttle doors sealed shut. It slipped away cloaked from the Drekans busy fighting the Terran ships. Rickard's squad dove and rolled, keeping the enemy away from Hawkins's shuttle. Each Terran pilot and ship became one, fighting on the edge to survive. The shuttle coasted to Thera, hidden in the blackness. Below, Sasha watched the sky, ready to call them in. The weapon grew quiet, the Drekans confused. The Terran ships regrouped, guarding the shuttle, waiting for the end. Hawkins' shuttle left the planet killer's hull, thrusters firing as it moved away. Inside, the commandos strapped in, hands tight on armrests, eyes focused on view screens. "Pull back," Rickard's voice came through comms. Pilots banked fighters hard, changing course, gaining distance from the huge weapon. The order flowed through every channel. Every soldier in space and ground reacted together. The planet killer sat silently in space, brooding and threatening. Then lights flickered inside. A deep rumble shook the blackness. Blasts shattered the dreadnought's skin, metal and composite peeling away. Fire and debris exploded out in destruction, spreading outward. Cheers erupted on Thera. Soldiers raised fists, shouting victory. Monitors showed the Drekan weapon coming apart in real time, burned into every mind. Sasha grabbed binoculars, scanning the sky. Escape pods dotted space, glimmers against the planet killer's growing corpse. She snapped orders into the radio. "Track those pods. Get recovery teams ready. Show mercy, not like them." Her team moved fast. Thera had seen too much death. Saving Drekans might mean more. A new start. Pods fell like tears. Ground forces stretched hands out, open, not fists. Drekans emerged from pods, weapons down, showing fear, confusion, a glimmer of hope. Commanders had promised swift victory, but staring at the humans, they knew those were empty words. Chatter shifted on comms. Surrenders flooded in. Drekans let go of weapons and loyalty. In orbit, the planet killer's bones hung, a monument to arrogance, final moments streaming galaxy-wide. A loud statement. Humanity stands, fights, wins. Rickard watched the death throes from his cockpit, reflected on his visor. "Just the start," he whispered. "Thera stands. We all stand. No quiet end for humanity. No underestimating humans now, not ever again." Sasha stood in the rubble of the central plaza. This place used to buzz with life. Now it was command central for rebuilding what the Drekan had destroyed. Data pads and holo displays covered makeshift tables. Engineers worked with the former slaves. Together they directed cranes lifting heavy beams from downed Drekan ships. The alien alloy would become new buildings. "Easy with that girder," Sasha yelled to a worker operating a loader. "It's got to last us forever." She pointed left, telling him to lay the beam down gentle. The worker set the metal in place. It fit perfect into what would be a new hospital wing. Sasha turned to a Drekan beside her. This Drekan used to be an engineer on the planet killer. Now he volunteered on Thera. He sketched a building layout on a clear screen. "Will this hold up against quakes?" Sasha asked. She studied the blueprint critically. The Drekan nodded. "Yes, my homeworld has similar shaking. This will stand." "Good," Sasha replied. "The sooner we get roofs, the sooner we can move the sick off the streets." The Drekan returned to his work. Sasha saw the mutual respect between their kinds. She walked through the crowd. She nodded approval at the mix of human innovation and Draken tech. Sasha stopped and looked up at the blue sky. It was finally clear of the dark shape that once promised doom. The roar of engines made Sasha turn. Rickard's new command ship, a rebuilt Draken destroyer, descended toward the planet. It hovered gracefully before landing. The wind from its engines whipped up dust across the worksite. Rickard emerged from the ship in his battle-worn uniform. The emblem of the Terran High Command was freshly displayed on his sleeve. The workers and soldiers cheered. Rickard acknowledged them with a nod. His face showed the tiredness of war, but also the brightness of seeing progress. "We did it, Sasha," he said. He strode up to her with confidence. "Thera stands, Commander. We sure did," she responded. They shook hands briefly, but solid. Their grasp spoke of shared camaraderie. "High Command says this is the turning point. Word is spreading across systems. There are uprisings, Sasha. Real change is happening," Rickard explained. His eyes scanned the busy site. Sasha followed his gaze. "We've lit more than victory. It's hope spreading." Rickard gave a rare, satisfied smile. "You're organizing this rebuild better than anyone. High Command chose right with you." "I'll do what it takes, you know that," Sasha said. "But the real work hasn't even started." Rickard looked serious again. "And neither has the war. Beating the planet killer was step one. The road ahead is long." "I know, but look around, humans and Draken working together. This is something new. We're stronger united," Sasha said hopefully. Rickard paused and saw the unity around them. "Then we fight on, united. Thera is just the start." With a mutual nod, they returned to work. Sasha directed the crews. Rickard coordinated with Terran forces off-world. Together they began forging the next chapter of human defiance. With them guiding it, Thera shone as a beacon of resistance in the face of adversity. Monitors in the command room on Thera showed that the galaxy now knew war. The Terran leaders discussed strategy and supplies. The room pulsed like an armory feeding soldiers on the battlefield. Rickard stared at live images of Draken soldiers marching. He pointed at stars on a map. "Move our ships here," he ordered. "We'll block their attack." Terran troops once wore scavenged armor. Now they wore new combat suits. Outside they trained where broken Draken machines littered the ground. Commands rang out as they drilled using their new gear. Plasma guns hummed as shields flickered on. Exercises taught them about their new equipment. Former slaves stood with the humans, united and determined. They moved in sync. "Faster! Sharper!" a trainer yelled as they practiced a hard move. Ships landed tight together, unloading crates of warships and weapons. Workers directed traffic, moving floating pallets stacked with weapons to storehouses. Mechanics swarmed the shiny new ships, tools whirring as they installed custom parts. Each ship bore Thera's symbol, proof of their defiance. On screen, Draken warlords appeared, surrounded by symbols of unity and revenge. They barked guttural orders, eyes burning with hate for the upstart humans. Rickard watched, thinking how to beat each one. "Listen," he told his team. "The Drekans unite, so must we. They want revenge. We fight for freedom. We'll use that. Their anger makes them predictable." The officers nodded, soaking up his confidence. "Their new flags won't protect them," Rickard said. "We know their weaknesses now." Outside, soldiers and allies ran drills. They flew the advanced ships, practicing complex moves beyond old skills. Cannons fired on targets, demolishing them accurately. Each blast promised the Draken their revenge was wasted. Sasha watched from a tower, missing nothing. She checked her pad and called Rickard. "The troops have mastered the new tech. They're ready to fight." "Good," Rickard replied over her earpiece. "We strike at dawn. No mercy or hesitation. We've shown the galaxy you don't underestimate humans. Now we end this." That night the forces prepared. Each soldier visualized their role in the coming battle. Each former slave gripped their weapon, knowing their cause was just. Silent before the battle, Rickard walked among the ships, each a mix of Terran and Draken. He touched the cold metal, feeling its power. They had come so far, from desperate defense to striking vipers. He climbed into his command ship, the controls familiar in his hands. Dawn broke over Thera. It was time. Engines surged as the fleet lifted off. Deadly warships sliced the sky. Below, the soldiers vowed silent oaths. They would follow their leader into fire. They would take the fight to the Draken's homes. In their war room, the Draken leaders saw the Terran ships coming. They roared orders, voices trembling. The humans approached, not with fear, but with vengeance. In the cave beneath Thera, faint lamps left shadows on tired faces. The team dug with resolve. Their shovels cut the old dirt. Rickard watched from the pit's edge. Sasha leaned over a table covered in muddy finds. She studied each under a bright light. A low chime echoed up. The digging ceased. Tools crashed down as quiet took over. All eyes went to the dirt wall. A smooth metal surface there shone back at them. The xenologists moved in, brushes sweeping off the grime of centuries. Hours later, the thing revealed itself. Something of unknown metals and shapes fused to the planet. It loomed over any man. Symbols hummed with sleeping power. Sasha's fingers traced the lines, feeling that latent buzz. Rickard cleared his throat. "So what is it?" One scientist, hands black with dirt, looked up from her scanner. "It's some kind of beacon, older than we've ever seen, meant to send a signal farther than we can measure." They crowded around, eyes wide, pulses quickening. If this beacon could reach past known space, who might answer its call? In the command tent, screens and cables snaked around the artifact. Scientists typed, xenologists spoke in awe and focus. Their task was huge. The artifact woke slowly as if from a long sleep. Panels glowed soft blue, pulsing steady. It hummed low, vibrating through boots. Rickard watched them work, face blank. Sasha joined him, just as calm. She spoke without meeting his eyes. "If we can get this working?" He nodded, the weight of command heavy. "If we can, everything changes." The scientist signaled. Rickard nodded. The beacon blazed brighter, shooting a beam up and out into the void. They watched it vanish, the same question hanging there. Would anyone answer? The control room was quiet and tense. Scientists and techs held their breath as Dr. Fernandez entered the final sequence into the alien device. Rickard and Sasha watched the team, faces serious. The stale air smelled like coffee and hot machines, anticipation crackling. A hum grew loud from the old alien tech, vibrating the floor under their boots. Fernandez stepped back. "It's done. The beacon's on." His voice barely cut through the loud hum filling the room. All eyes went to the holo display as it showed the beacon's pulse, a bright streak vanishing into the blackness beyond the stars. Minutes passed. Just as whispers of doubt began, the display blinked with an incoming signal. It came from the unknown, growing stronger. "It's a response," said Lieutenant Mira, adjusting the dials. The room went silent again. The display shifted and alien figures appeared, skin shimmering. The room murmured in awe. One alien stepped forward. Their voice filled the speakers. "We are the Aeonians. We got your call." Rickard stepped closer, squinting. "What can you offer us?" His tone was cautious. "We offer aid," it replied. "We know your war against the Drekans. Your bravery shines brightly." Around the room, hope mixed with disbelief. Sasha touched Rickard's arm, acknowledging the moment. The display shifted, showing sleek silver ships unlike the Terrans, with smaller fighters glinting like stars. "We will help with our technology, forged from peacekeeping," the alien continued, "and wisdom for harmony in space." Rickard nodded, smiling slightly. "We welcome your aid and are ready to learn." The alien inclined its head. "Then let us begin. We will arrive at your coordinates. Prepare for our coming." The transmission ended. Cheers erupted. Sasha turned to Rickard, hopeful of victory. "This changes everything," she said loudly. Rickard nodded, eyes fixed on the silent display. "We're not just fighting now. We're part of something bigger." The energy shifted from tense to excited anticipation. People raced to prepare for the aliens' arrival. Outside, the vast night sky no longer seemed so ominous. Thera was now a beacon of hope, a call answered, showing the power of unity and the human spirit. The aliens' arrival would help win this war. Humanity took a stand, and now They did not stand alone. In the war room, we stood around the 3D map of the galaxy. The advisors showed Rickard and Sasha supply routes to hit, speaking quietly as they planned carefully. "We strike their supply lines here, here, and here," Rickard said firmly, pointing at the map. "No civilian targets. We're better than them." Sasha looked at the advisors. "What do you think?" An advisor moved the map, rearranging it. "Be careful. The oppressed didn't oppress." They kept planning, layering strategy on strategy. Outside, night crept on as the room stayed lit with energy. Dawn ended the darkness. Ships rumbled with power as crews checked systems, sealing hatches. The air buzzed with purpose and change. In the hangar, Sasha double-checked her gear and weapons. Soldiers looked to her, needing certainty. She nodded tightly. They'd follow her anywhere. On his ship, Rickard sat in the command chair, fingers dancing across the console and giving orders. Silent advisors watched, reassuring with their ancient might. The fleet surged into the stars. The attack was precise. Sasha watched the readout as blasts hit depots accurately. Controlled shockwaves crippled Drekan machines, avoiding innocents. "We have ground reports," an officer called. "Civilian uprisings." Sasha saw images of scared faces turning determined. A child grabbed a rock, a mother a wrench, both before a fallen drone. They moved quickly, striking system after system. Each blow broke Drekan chains, swelling the wave of revolt. Word spread faster than they flew. Freedom was coming, with a human face. After freed worlds breathed, eyes squinting at the unfamiliar sun, hands reaching for their liberators. Soldiers and advisors moved among them, not conquerors, but freedom bringers. They fixed what could be fixed, a testament to diverse unity. Rickard watched children play and laugh in ruined machines, not ignorant laughter, but surviving and overcoming. "We're winning hearts, not just battles," he said to Sasha beside him. She watched the children, face softening. "Maybe that's how we win this war." The galaxy heard of Thera, of humans and allies. Hope spread like fire, reshaping the stars. In the cold light of the war room on the Resolute flagship, the tension buzzed like the ship's engines. A hologram of the Drekan homeworld spun in the room's center, surrounded by stern Terran officers and Aeonians. They stared at the flickering image as they planned the siege. Rickard stood at the table displaying the hologram. His fingers tapped the cold metal as he traced attack points over the three-dimensional map. Each tap marked his hard-won skill, guided by the Aeonians. "Here," Rickard said steadily, pointing at bright spots ringing the planet. "The shield generators in orbit. Take them out and we punch through to the surface." An Aeonian draped in a shimmering robe leaned in, their resonant voice vibrating in human ears. "Our tech can disrupt the shields, but timing is critical. Your pilots must be precise." "We have the best," Rickard replied without doubt. "Sasha's been drilling them hard." Right on cue, Sasha's voice cut through Rickard's wristcom, crisp and sure. "Ground teams prepped, Rickard. We've simulated every Drekan tactic. When you crack open that sky, we'll storm their ground." Rickard almost smiled. "No doubt, Commander. Stand by." The room returned to preparing, filled with soldiers' armor clinking outside, the ship's steady hum and the quiet resolve of all inside. The hologram spun its lazy rotation, soon to be a historic battlefield. On the system's edge, the Terran Armada loomed. All ship classes formed up, scarred hulls patched by human and alien hands. Last checks and adjustments buzzed through the fleet, a symphony of readiness. In her quarters, Sasha checked her armor once more. She secured each piece with ease, the weight grounding her. Her hand brushed her helmet's comlink, connecting her to Rickard and her troops. The vastness of space stretched before her porthole, stars twinkling distant. She knew the formidable Drekan defenses waited unseen, but she also knew her diverse troops, humans and former Drekan slaves, now united in this fight. They shared a bond to carry them through the fire. The fleet stirred awake, engines flaring controlled bursts. Sasha strapped on her helmet, breath steady inside. Rickard's voice commanded through the comm, "All units, this is it. Begin the assault." As the Terran ship surged in coordinated might and daring, Aeonian tech came alive, disrupting the shield generators. Explosions dotted space as the first barriers fell, breaching defenses. Below, Sasha led her troops into dropships, vibrations thrumming as they descended the gap in shields. The looming Draken homeworld grew larger through the narrow viewports. The ground forces readied themselves for their pivotal role. Rifle gripped with determination, Sasha knew the Draken Empire would fall. The diverse Terran armada had united behind a common goal. Now was humanity's time to show their mettle, for the galaxy to witness underestimating them. They were ready to lead the charge, fight for every inch for each soul wanting freedom. The battle for the Draken homeworld was beginning. The Draken homeworld sky ignited with enemy ships, clashing metal and deadly energy blasts. Inside his cramped fighter cockpit, Rickard locked onto a command ship. His targeting system beeped as he scored confirmed hits. He pushed the throttle to full burn and dove through the hailstorm of enemy fire. His ship shuddered from near misses, but he stayed on target. "Ground teams, stay ready, defenses down, prepare to move in," Rickard said firmly over the comm. Around him, Terran pilots dodged and weaved through the firestorm with hard-learned skill. Below, Draken soldiers poured firepower to shield their world, but the Terrans had the edge with fluid, unpredictable maneuvers honed through endless struggle. The sleek Aeonian ships glided through the flak, firing advanced cannons with precision to dismantle enemy artillery. More than weapons, they brought knowledge to guide the Terrans in galactic war. Explosions marked the fall of Draken defenses. In the raging void, Rickard struck hard and fast at the enemy's heart. The relentless Drakens pushed back, but the Terrans matched them, move for move, countering each advance as if reading their very thoughts. On the ground, Terran troops readied themselves as the skies cleared of foes, their path lit by battle's glow and Aeonian wisdom's steady light. Boots hit dirt, eyes fixed on the horizon. "This is it," Rickard said over comms, climbing steeply. "Battle's just begun. Hold the line and push forward." The clash for the Draken homeworld raged, but the Terrans stood firm, spirits unbroken, cause righteous. At the front, leading the charge into enemy land, Rickard held fast, convinced they would prevail and end this war. Terrans and Aeonians forged ahead, unified against adversity, their unbending will to fight, to win, to survive. Sasha felt the familiar weight of her rifle in her hands. The elite unit's boots clunked on the metal floor as the dropship descended to the Draken planet. Out the windows, Sasha saw smoke-belching war factories and fortress spires across the scarred land. The dropship rocked under enemy fire. "Brace!" Sasha yelled. Her team grabbed for handholds as the pilot dodged flak bursts. The ship jolted their teeth on landing. The hatches blew open. Rifles ready, the units spilled out. Rattles and hisses met them, Draken mechanized units. Sasha aimed down her sights, firing controlled bursts. Each trigger pull dropped an enemy drone. Beside her, soldiers crouched and advanced, shooting from cover to cover. The channels buzzed with teams reporting in. "Alpha taking heavy fire. Bravo engaged." Sasha keyed her mic. "Charlie, push Sector 7. Weak spot." The streets became conflict arteries, each corner a death trap. Sasha's team used hit-and-run attacks, recalling Thera's street fights. They moved like ghosts, knowing their roles, drilled until second nature. Explosions boomed as charges hit Draken positions. Smoke and debris stung their eyes. Sasha called targets through her ragged breathing mask. Her team responded, precise and smooth. They found fearful civilians huddled in doorways. Sasha signaled her squad. "Keep them safe. Move them from the bullets." The soldiers nodded, herding the non-combatants away with unwavering humanity. A Draken mech rounded a building. Cannon aimed at them. Sasha and her team scattered, lobbing grenades. The damaged mech collapsed in sparks. They pressed on, each room and corridor a small victory, steps toward liberation. The Terrans' resolve shone through the blood and grime. They were not conquerors but liberators, righteous and just. Sasha's steady voice guided her soldiers through the din. They listened for her commands, her presence, their anchor. As sunset painted the sky with battle's fire, they knew they were part of something greater. The ruthless invasion continued, each action defying the galaxy's tyranny. This was being Terran, undeterred, unbeatable, unwavering. As night fell, Sasha's unit dug in. Each street won a declaration of freedom. They would not back down. In a bombed building's shadow, Rickard's team traps the Drekan prince. He seems like a kid, his bright scales turned grey from dirt and smoke. His eyes dart to the rifles pointing at him. He sees the soldiers' strong stances. He raises his hands. His voice is steady. "I give up. I can give info, but please spare me." Rickard steps forward, looking suspicious. He nods at his team to lower their guns a bit. He keeps his pistol on the Drekan. "Talk!" The prince straightens up. Dust falls off his royal clothes. "You're winning," he says. "I know where your targets are. Promise to spare me, and I'll tell everything." Rickard just stares, pistol still aimed. "You have my word. Start talking." The prince spills secrets, map coordinates, hidden paths, security details. Rickard listens. He glances at Sasha, recording it all. The Drekan talks about hidden tunnels, weak fortress spots, guard schedules. He reveals the main communication hub's place, vital for Drekan command. Sasha leans in and whispers, "This could do it." She looks at the prince. "How do we know this isn't a trap?" The prince's shoulders sag. "I've got nothing left to defend. I just want to live." Rickard nods at his team. They cuff the prince. "Take him alive. Don't harm him." The prince moves without fighting. He walks like he accepts his fate. As they lead him away, Rickard turns to his group. "We act on this now." In days after each hit succeeds, command centers crumble one by one. Smoke rises from fallen control bastions. Human soldiers sneak in and take over. In one raid, a huge Drekan hub filled with enemies. It's night. Computer screens cast weird light on focused soldier faces inside. Rickard's team gets past fencing. Sasha takes a unit through the front, while another disables backup power. Inside they move like ghosts, silently taking down guards. Muffled steps, calm breaths. They reach the main room where commanders bark orders, unaware of the humans already inside. A short but heavy firefight lights the room up. Drekan bodies drop, screens shatter, consoles spark and explode. Sasha shouts clear orders. Her unit executes each one smoothly. After, Rickard stands breathing hard in the chaotic room. He watches his soldiers grab drives, intel, and smash what's left of the gear. The room reeks of burned wires and ozone. Each success fuels the next, a wave of winds pushing them toward the goal. As the capital's fall nears, they keep pressing on, driven to end Drekan rule. Word spreads, hope sparks like a new flame across the galaxy. In his cell, the prince watches reports on a small screen left on. His look is hard to read, but his eyes glimmer with new respect for the humans he once dismissed. In the war room, Sasha and Rickard examine the map, planning their next hit. They share a look, knowing the tide turned, things shifted. Rickard nods to the team. "We keep moving. For Thera, for humanity, we end this." Outside, the planet shakes from the battle, but the soldiers' will is unyielding. They charge ahead with courage, victory close, ready to usher in a new era. The huge Drekan citadel tower loomed like a dark shadow against the red sky. The thick walls were covered in cannons and turrets. Countless slaves had spilled their blood and sweat building it. Now it would see the end of the Drekan Empire. Rickard's armor showed the marks from a dozen earlier fights. That proved he had the grit to reach this battle. He strode down the front line, staring at the citadel. His helmet visor was down. "Take this place and we break them," he shouted. His amplified voice carried over the din. The mixed human and alien soldiers yelled back. They gripped their rifles. Freedom was their shared goal. The ground shook as the Terran tanks fired first. Cracks ran along the walls where the shells hit. Return fire from the Drekan defenses blasted holes in the ground. It threw soldiers aside. Screams mixed with barked orders. Rickard charged forward, his gun spitting at the enemy. He dove into a trench as debris rained down. "Push forward," he yelled, climbing out to join the attack on the cracked wall. Inside the dark citadel, Sasha and her squad stomped down stone corridors. Their bootsteps were muffled by the rock. Every shadow might hide a Drekan warlord. They came to a blocked door covered in forbidden Drekan writing. Sasha set the charges and waved the team back. The blast shook loose ancient dust. They charged through the new hole. Ahead, the throne room doors stood open, taunting them. They burst inside to find Drekan warlords in ceremonial armor with weapons ready. Violence waited in the charged air. Sasha opened fire immediately, dropping one enemy after another. The battle became a blur of firefights. Neither side yielded ground as Drekan and Terran soldiers clashed in brutal combat. Sasha fired, ducked, and fired again, moving with practiced precision. Her squad fought fiercely at her side, driven by the promise of freedom. Over the radio, Rickard's voice called, "Their defenses are down! Keep pushing!" With a final surge, the Terrans advanced. Heaps of Drekan bodies lay where once unbeatable leaders had stood, undone by arrogance. The heart of their might now pulsed to the rhythm of human victory. Rickard stepped into the gory throne room, eyes meeting Sasha's. No words were needed. The fallen citadel told the story, the Drekan Empire's fate sealed in blood and grit. It would stand as proof of human resolve. Above them, the Terran flag flew, snapping through the windless air, a sign no force could extinguish the fire of human defiance. The Drekan homeworld stayed quiet, a hushed monument to the end of a lengthy, bitter struggle, now under Terran control. Its fighting forces nothing but scattered, beaten fighters. They put down their weapons, their reptile faces empty as they accepted defeat. The final moments of a dying kingdom, the last heartbeats fighting back. Rickard moved through the ruined capital city. His boots cracked debris and spent bullet shells. He watched the surrender with a tired look. In his hand, the Terran army flag, dirty but unbroken. His voice hoarse from giving orders, now calling for restraint. "We treat the Drekans with honor," he ordered. "Captives get the same food and medical care as our own." Soldiers nodded and led the enemy into a temporary camp. Medics checked Drekan wounds, hands careful and exact. Sasha walked among the Terran soldiers, posture rigid, face set with stern purpose. She directed moving supplies, words clear and forceful. "Secure those power cells. We'll require them to rebuild." Her voice cut through the murmuring and clanging, a beacon reminding all of duty in this new age. In response, soldiers secured the area, setting up checkpoints precisely. Nearby, the Aeonians floated gracefully, robes untouched by destruction's dust. They spoke softly. Terran leaders sought their advice on the change from war to harmony. "The key is balance," an Aeonian whispered. "Give structure but also hope of a fresh beginning." Rickard nodded. His face showed exhaustion and contentment. He watched his soldiers work with the Aeonians, setting up communication gear, planning an uncertain but promising future. "Let's assemble those council chairs," Rickard said, turning to Terran and alien advisors. "We require a voice for all wanting peace." Sasha stood beside him, scanning the gathering. She pointed at representatives. Her plan formed as she talked. "We'll need the trade groups involved, and the independent planets too. They must commit, or this won't endure." The meeting space buzzed with action. Holograms showed galaxy maps and potential members. Voices rose and fell debating. The air alive with creating something lasting. Evenings on the Drekan planet now fell softly, unfamiliar after constant conflict. In the fading light, Terran engineers and Drekan workers toiled together, clearing rubble and restoring power to darkened city blocks. Here, in these shared efforts, the first true steps toward peace took form. Rickard watched from a distance, feeling the weight of his new role as a peacemaker. The war won, but forging peace lay ahead. He knew history would judge him not just by battle victories, but by how well he could mend war's wounds and build a future founded on fairness and mutual regard. In the coming days, a new galactic council took shape, created by those who had fought hardest for its need. The Terran banner still flew, but now represented not a faction, but the uniting force of a galaxy striving for lasting peace. After the war, the aliens approached Rickard and Sasha as they stood in the wreckage. Sasha's armor was still marked from battle. Rickard's boots had dirt from fighting. "We want to show you something," an alien said softly. They followed the aliens to a tall, untouched building among the rubble. Doors slid open with a hiss, revealing a huge room lined with pillars of light. Holograms flickered in the pillars, showing texts, plans, and images from many worlds. "This is the Galactic Library," an alien explained. "Civilizations share knowledge here. It's our history." Sasha walked forward, her face showing awe. She moved her hand over the light. The pillar changed, showing new things about government, machines, and ideas. "Learn from those before you," the alien said. "The library is now open to humans." Rickard touched a light stream. Data wrapped around his hand, surprising him. Sasha looked up, hungry to learn. "There's so much here," she said. "Where do we start?" The alien smiled. "Anywhere you want. Learning is vast." They spent hours, then days in the library. Machines hummed as they dove into the wisdom of many worlds. Virtual pages turned before them. Holographic landscapes appeared. Ancient talks echoed. Rickard studied starship models that flew in empty space, their engines powerful and smooth. Sasha read about social structures, seeking stability and peace. "This could prevent future fights," Sasha said, pointing to a government plan. Rickard nodded, thinking of using these ideas on Earth. "And these ships could strengthen our fleet without fear," he said. Their potential grew as they learned. The two soldiers had survived war. Now, surrounded by light and learning, they would guide peace. This was a new era for them and humanity. They had earned their place in space. Now they would use the library's wisdom to find a brighter future. Sasha faced the council representatives, filling the massive circular chamber. She wore plain clothes, not armor. Her eyes locked onto familiar and strange faces alike. She stepped to the podium and started speaking. "Council members, I'm here to build bridges, not as a soldier." Her voice rang out, inviting cooperation. Even those who'd only known humans as warriors nodded along. "We've known war, but now we want peace. I'm here to find common ground and alliances that help us all." She motioned to a display lighting up with a map. Former enemy worlds now had new symbols showing Terran rebuilding efforts to unite. "Integrating these worlds we include, not impose. We listen and learn from past enemies, for in them we may find allies." Murmurs of agreement spread. She stepped away, opening discussions. Meanwhile, Rickard walked a once-enemy city now buzzing with life. Terrans worked alongside former foes, repairing things. He passed market stalls selling goods from both sides. Sounds of commerce and talk filled the air as people worked toward a brighter future than the wars that defined them. Rickard oversaw transport, construction, and new shared spaces for old enemies. He gave firm handshakes, stern looks, and softening smiles at real efforts. He met leaders, speaking steadily. "We bring cooperation, not conquest, partnership, not submission." They listened closely. Children laughed and chased balls, mixing with industrial rebuilding sounds. Rickard watched from afar, smiling slightly. This was his battlefield now, and he would win the peace like he'd won the war. In the meeting hall, Terrans and Aeonians planned to stabilize the region, debating seriously as wartime strategies. But here weapons were ideas and compromise. An Aeonian advisor stood by Rickard, graceful and wise, speaking softly but significantly. "We must build for the future so no single power can threaten our well-being." Rickard nodded. Every step must be toward balance, letting worlds stand on their own, yet stay part of the whole. The Aeonian gestured to a hologram showing the galaxy, points of light connected for trade, defense, and culture. Together, we weave a tapestry that will one day cover and warm us all. Rickard, Sasha, and the Aeonians worked late, unwavering, with clear purpose. They built a lasting peace. And as the stars turned overhead, history's pages also turned, starting a new chapter for humanity and the galaxy. The engineers roared as the transport cut through Thera's atmosphere. Rickard stepped onto the soft ground, his boots leaving prints. The air smelled fresh, not burnt like before. People gathered, humans and aliens. Some clapped, some just watched quietly. No shouts, just a hum. Kids ran between the adults, laughing. The buildings around them stood rebuilt. The kids had no signs of war, just joy. Rickard moved through the crowd, touching a wall, a plant. Faces looked at him, some known, most not. Their eyes held stories of struggle and victory. An old man came forward, hand outstretched. His grip was firm and strong from holding tools and hope. "We owe you," his gravelly voice said. Rickard shook his head. "This place is your strength." The old man smiled and left. Rickard passed market stalls of goods and chatter. People bartered and laughed. Sasha joined him, confident, taking it in. They stopped at a clear fountain. "A crater was here," Sasha said. Kids now played and splashed happily. Rickard watched them, a small smile on his face. They reached a park with wide trees. A simple monument stood there with names. The fallen. Rickard traced the letters, promises, and memories. "We remember. We build for them," Sasha said steadily. Rickard nodded slightly. Laughter washed over their silence. A girl approached Rickard, eyes wide. "You're the hero?" she asked. Rickard knelt to her level. "I just had a job to do. You're the future. Make it bright." She nodded and left to join her friends. Rickard watched her, the sun warm. Sasha clasped his shoulder, sharing the burden and hope. "Together then," she said. "Together," Rickard agreed firmly. They walked on, Rickard vowing to those who gave everything. Each step committed to the hard-won peace. This showed what happens when you underestimate humans. Rickard walked through the dirt. His boots sunk into the ground with each step. He looked up at the stars shining in the black sky. They glittered like dots against the darkness. A beacon sent out a signal into space, humming quietly. He stood alone and breathed out. His breath turned to fog in the cold air. Thoughts ran through his mind, endless like streams of data. Behind him, the ground vibrated from people rebuilding a world torn apart by war. Sasha approached with loud, steady footsteps. She stood next to Rickard with a firm and reassuring presence. Together, they stared up at the expanding night sky. "The beacon's still on," Rickard said in a low but carrying voice. Sasha nodded. "It's more than a signal now, it's a promise." Rickard looked at her with crinkled eyes. "A promise for what?" "A promise that this," Sasha motioned to the stars, "won't just be a battlefield, that we'll find friends out there." They locked eyes in understanding. They had fought battles together. Now people saw them as builders, diplomats, survivors. They walked back to the command center. Shadows stretched long behind them. Warm light spilled outside the building. Laughter and voices bubbled out from within. The crew had seen darkness and now worked toward the light. Inside, screens lined the walls. They showed supply routes and plans. Sasha leaned over a table, pointing. "Here and here, we'll build trade stations. They'll need protection, but also unite us." Rickard joined her and drummed his fingers on the metal. "We'll need to train pilots for the new ships too. The Aeonians have new techniques." They worked late into the night. Others bent over tasks around them. Machines hummed and pens scratched against paper. Sasha stepped back from the table and rubbed her eyes. She saw Rickard speaking excitedly with an engineer about engine modifications. She moved to a window and looked outside. Tiny workers fixed power lines far below. New buildings rose up. Even in darkness, their determination shone through. Rickard joined her and brushed her arm. "What happens when you underestimate humans?" he said, almost smiling. Sasha smiled back. "They rise. They unite. They prevail." Outside, the beacon pulsed steadily. Inside, humanity planned its path. Rickard and Sasha, heroes now, worked toward a future full of stars. They wouldn't forget the struggles, the lost lives, the lessons learned. The story of Thera showed human spirit. The beacon signaled unity, endurance, and an unyielding will once underestimated. This showed what happens when you underestimate humans.